Since ancient times, humanity has faced struggles over essential natural resources, especially water, a fundamental necessity for life. This struggle is evident in biblical stories, such as the account in Exodus 15:22-27, where the Israelites, after crossing the Red Sea into the wilderness, desperately searched for drinkable water. They arrived at Marah, meaning bitterness in Hebrew, only to find water that was undrinkable. The name Marah reflects more than just the literal bitterness of the water. It symbolizes the dire situation and the emotional state of the people. Exhausted, thirsty, and fearful, the Israelites expressed frustration and bitterness, grumbling against Moses as their faith wavered. Their complaints reflected deeper feelings of fear, hopelessness, and despair. A parallel struggle can be seen today in Nigeria's Niger Delta, where people face their own Marah. Despite being surrounded by water, they lack access to clean, drinkable water. This hardship disproportionately affects women and children, who often walk over 3 kilometers to fetch water for their families. Nigeria, like other resource-rich sub-Saharan African nations, is endowed with abundant natural resources, particularly oil. However, decades of oil exploitation have devastated the environment, polluting rivers and rendering water sources unsafe for consumption. The people of the Niger Delta, living in poverty, face constant humiliation and injustice as they demand basic necessities like clean water and sanitation. Their plight echoes the suffering of the Israelites under Pharaoh's oppression in Egypt. Corruption and inequality exacerbate their struggles, creating a cycle of conflict and violence. Yet despite this bitterness, the people of the Niger Delta hold on to hope and cry out for justice. In the biblical narrative, Moses, chosen by God, stood up to Pharaoh and his officials, challenging their oppression of the Israelites. Moses not only led his people to freedom, but also transformed their bitter water at Marah into drinkable water by casting a tree into it. Similarly, the people of Nigeria need leaders who, like Moses, will stand against corruption and injustice, advocate for the mistreated, and restore access to clean water and dignity for all. Water, a fundamental gift from God, is essential for fulfilling the purpose of life. To pollute or deny access to it is to act like Pharaoh, defying God's will for humanity and creation. We are all called to challenge the pharaohs of our time, systems, leaders, and even our own indifference that perpetuate suffering. We must confront the inner Marah within ourselves, the bitterness born of fear, frustration, and hopelessness. Only by removing this inner bitterness can we fulfill our responsibility, like Moses, to bring healing and restoration. As Jesus reminds us, whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. Matthew 10:42. By embracing this call, we can transform bitterness into hope and ensure access to clean water for all, a sign of God's provision and purpose for life. After leading the Israelites away from the Red Sea, Moses guided them into the desert of Shur. For 3 days, they traveled through the wilderness without finding any water. Finally, they reached an oasis called Marah, but the water there was too bitter to drink, so the place was named Marah, meaning bitter. The people, frustrated and desperate, turned on Moses, asking, "What are we supposed to drink?" In response, Moses prayed to the Lord, who showed him a piece of wood. When Moses threw the wood into the water, it became drinkable. At Marah, the Lord gave the people a decree, testing their faithfulness, and said, "If you listen carefully to my voice, do what is right, obey my commands, and follow my decrees, I will protect you from the diseases I inflicted on Egypt, for I am the Lord who heals you." After leaving Marah, the Israelites moved on to Elim, where they found an abundance of water with 12 springs and 70 palm trees. They set up camp there by the water. From Elim, the Israelites journeyed to the wilderness of Sin, located between Elim and Mount Sinai. arriving on the 15th day of the second month after leaving Egypt. Once again, the people complained against Moses and Aaron, saying, "We wish the Lord had let us die in Egypt. At least there we had plenty to eat, but now you've brought us into this wilderness to starve." Hearing their complaints, the Lord told Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven. The people can collect what they need each day, and I will test whether they obey my instructions. On the 6th day, they will gather double the amount to prepare for the Sabbath." Moses and Aaron announced to the people, "You will see that the Lord has brought you out of Egypt. He has heard your complaints, which are ultimately against him, not us. This evening he will provide meat, and in the morning, bread to satisfy you." As Aaron addressed the people, they looked toward the wilderness and saw the glory of the Lord in the cloud. The Lord then told Moses, "I have heard the Israelites' complaints. Tell them that in the evening they will eat meat, and in the morning they will have all the bread they want, so they will know I am the Lord." That evening, a flock of quail covered the camp, and in the morning, dew left behind a flaky substance on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they asked, "What is this?" Moses explained, "It is the food the Lord has provided. Gather as much as each household needs, about 2 quarts per person." The Israelites did as instructed. Some gathered more, others less, but everyone had just enough. Moses warned them not to keep any until morning, but some disobeyed, and the leftover food became infested with maggots and smelled terrible. Moses was angered by this. The people continued gathering manna each morning, but by midday it melted away. On the 6th day they collected twice as much, and Moses explained, "Tomorrow is the Sabbath, a holy day of rest. Prepare today what you need for tomorrow, and the food will remain fresh." Those who followed this instruction found that the food stayed good, but some people still went out to gather food on the Sabbath and found none. The Lord rebuked their disobedience, reminding them that the Sabbath was his gift to them. The food, called manna, was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers with honey. Moses instructed the people to preserve some manna in a jar as a reminder for future generations of God's provision in the wilderness. Aaron placed the jar before the Lord, eventually placing it inside the Ark of the Covenant. For 40 years, the Israelites ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan, the land promised to them.